More now on our main story, and with 6 months to go, how much money has been spent preparing for Brexit, and what impact will leaving the EU have on the UK's finances in the long run? Here's Chris Mason with the story so far, with the help of the BBC News virtual reality studio.
Since the referendum, the government has allocated an extra £3.7 billion or so to prepare for Brexit. Of that, the largest sum to date, £455 million, has gone to the Home Office, the department with the job of creating a new immigration system. The Department for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs has been given £377 million. That's the look at replacing the EU's policies on things like fishing and farming. There's also the cost of two brand spanking new departments. They gobble up nearly £481 million. Yep, there's a lot of paperwork to do, and someone's got to do it. Then there's that Brexit divorce bill for the UK's share of EU commitments made before it decided to leave. That will be up to £39 billion. So, splitting up is pricey. But those in favour of leaving say those costs are relatively small compared to the money that could be saved when the UK goes its own way. And that is where this bus comes in. During the referendum campaign, some Brexit supporters claim the UK sends £350 million a week to Brussels. That's the equivalent of about £18 billion a year. But once you take into account the rebate, that's the UK's discount to its EU membership fee, and money sent to Brussels that gets parcelled up and sent back to pay for stuff here in the UK, the figure is more like £9 billion. That's a more realistic estimate of the cash that could theoretically be saved and spent on schools or the NHS. But with 6 months to go, there are still bucketfuls of unknowns. What will our future relationship with the EU look like? Will we stick pretty close to its rules or not? And what deals will be done around the world? And will a withdrawal agreement be signed up to in the next few months? And with it, a transition period where not a lot changes for the best part of 2 years after Brexit in March next year. Given this sizable collection of questions and not many answers, one of the hardest things to predict is what will happen to the economy after the 29th of March next year. Any disruption could wipe out the money saved from EU membership. Back in 2016, the Office for Budget Responsibility predicted that borrowing would increase by £15 billion by 2021 as a result of leaving. That's partly down to predicted slower productivity growth and reduced migration. If the UK walks away with next to nothing agreed, a no-deal Brexit in the jargon, then that will throw up even more questions about what our future might hold.
That's Chris Mason there. Now, we'll be answering some of the most common questions about Brexit this week. And today, our Deputy Political Editor, John Pienaar, has been looking at the impact that Brexit could have on immigration.
How will trade work after Brexit?
Will we be richer or poorer?
Why haven't we left yet?
Will migrants still be able to come?
Corn fritters, anyone? First, someone has to pick it. And here, on this farm outside Peterborough for 10 hours a day, the answer's this team of Bulgarians and Romanians. Does Britain need so many migrants?
Well, not enough natives want to do work like this, not here at this farm outside Peterborough, not in a lot of places. Florian, do you think you're taking British jobs?
Yeah, I think yes, because they don't want to do this job and we need money and should take this job.
Some places where you rarely see a migrant voted for Brexit too. So who will get a welcome to Britain after Brexit? Everyone expected more migrants after the EU expanded in 2004 with 10 new countries. But it wasn't just a trickle. Numbers increased and then increased again, till that increase reached 189,000 in 2016, the year of the vote to leave. In these parts, foreign labour's always come in and been welcomed. Italians and Poles after the war, from the Commonwealth in later decades. The face of Britain has changed completely.
Nothing much changes immediately on Brexit Day. Migrants already part of the British picture can stay whatever happens, though they will have to register. Free movement goes on during a Brexit transition if there is a Brexit deal. And there could be a visa system like the one for non-EU workers for some jobs. And those numbers have already gone up, much higher than those coming from Europe.
Hey, thanks very much. Take a look round Peterborough. Lots of places, plenty of businesses run by migrants, many more which rely on them. Then there's agriculture, construction, cleaning and hospitality. It also means pressure and some complaints about wages kept low, strain on schools, hospitals. Working out the UK's need for migrants, then matching that need and still satisfying those voters who want tighter control, that may turn out to be a political mission impossible. What do you think? Does migration cause a strain?
Yes, I think so. There's more population now, so it's got to put strain on the hospitals and everything else, really.
Yeah. You can't please everyone. The government's target for cutting net migration may be changed or scrapped in future, but either way more will come. Perhaps in future mostly from outside Europe, to live and work in businesses and services. Planning the new face of Britain will be hard. Recruiting and training Brits to do the jobs some migrants do, tougher still. And maybe hardest of all politically, selling that vision to the country. John Pienaar, BBC News, Peterborough.
And we'll have more key Brexit questions coming up throughout the week, including what it could mean for the Union and whether we'll be richer or poorer after we leave. And indeed, on that subject, we're going to ask now, what impact will leaving the EU have on the economy? And we are joined in the studio by the trade specialist and former international trade negotiator, Jason Hunter. And I'm also joined by David Patton, who's Professor of Industrial Economics at Nottingham University and member of Economists for Free Trade. And we're very grateful to both of you for joining us. Jason, if I might start with you, let's look into the crystal ball and imagine that we leave the EU in 6 months with no deal. How easy would it be to trade under World Trade Organization terms?
Do you remember when that question was asked of Remainers during the referendum and everyone screamed Project Fear? And Project Fear turned into Project Fact. What we now need to start doing is being prepared for Project Catastrophe, because no deal is looking the most likely outcome of the discussions. What that means for the UK economy is everything we export around the world will have one of the highest tariffs it's possible to apply. So if we sell a widget today for £1 to Mexico, Canada, United States, Japan, South Korea, anywhere to 60 countries outside the EU and within the EU 27, everything we export will become more expensive for our customers to buy from us, and more complex and more complicated. Now, 5.4 million small to medium-sized enterprises in the UK. The economists for Brexit say that 334,000 of those currently ship to the European Union without any problems, friction-free. Each of those will have to have a cost of thousands and thousands of pounds to these small businesses to get freight forwarders, customs agents, or they have to figure it out for themselves. Nobody knows how to do it.
OK, well, let's put the point to David Patton. If there was a no deal, David, under World Trade Organization terms, do you accept that that will incur costs, as both Jason and the International Monetary Fund suggest? Doesn't look like you're there, David. So, Jason, I'm going to carry on talking to you, if I may. So, what about the argument that some people say, look, if we do leave with no deal and it's World Trade Organization terms, the reality is we'll end up making lots of little mini deals, and that will enable the economy to function?
Well, if you think about it, right now we've got the best deal it's possible to get with the largest single market on the planet. As well as that, as a member of the European Union, we have 34 different trade agreements with other countries and trade blocs. So we have another 60 countries, 60 countries around the world that we can export to freely and much more easily, including with the United States of America. To save David having to say it, they claim that more than half of our trade is not with the European Union, and he's absolutely right. Just over 55% of our trade is with those other countries around the world. Now, we don't always have to have a complete free trade agreement, because that's like a marriage. You end up with a free trade agreement. Before that, you have an engagement, and then before you that for a period of time, and before that you have a few dates, and you might have a few phone calls before that. What the European Union have with the USA are dozens upon dozens of cooperation agreements, which is the first stages to get to an FTA further down the line. And these things take years. And if you ask any of the experts around the world in international trade, they will say, okay, if the UK leaves with no deal, the first place they're likely to go to and get a trade deal with, the quickest and easiest one, will probably be with somebody like Canada, because they have a liberalised trade policy, very similar to the United Kingdom's. They have a liberal democracy type governance situation in the country. And you're probably looking at about 2 years to negotiate a trade deal with Canada. That's the quick and easy one. Something with the EU, probably 8 to 10 years. And then we've got another 60 to do all around the world after that.
OK, well, let's bring in David Patton, who I hope you can hear me now, David. Sorry, we've had a few problems establishing contact with you. I don't know how much of that you heard, but we're discussing if there was a no deal and Britain leaves the EU under World Trade Organisation terms, do you accept that any deals that we did make, as Jason says, will take years and there will inevitably be costs involved? OK, well, David, I'm really sorry. We can see you, but we can't hear you. While we're trying to, match your voice to your face, Jason, I'll come back to you. The crux here, of course, is that people voted to take back control, didn't they? And for the UK to be free to trade with whoever they like, whenever we like. And you can't just reject the decision of 17 million people, can you? Because you don't agree with them.
That's not what I'm saying. I mean, I think we should, 2 years on, 2016, we know that Vote Leave lied. We know that Leave EU lied. We know that Vote Leave broke the law. The Electoral Commission have prosecuted them. They overspent by 10% to get a 2% vote swing. David Cameron said there'd be World War III. George Osborne said we're going to have an emergency budget and the world's going to collapse. None of that happened. Nobody knew. Everybody lied. That's not democracy. If you think any of that's okay, you don't believe in democracy. What you do believe in is Brexit, and that's just ridiculous.
Okay,
we have to have a fair, free and open vote. Now we know what the deal is. Let's find out what no deal means, because we know. Experts all around the world are telling us this is what happens under WTO. Or you stay in the EU.
Well,
those are your two options.
Or you have Theresa May's Chequers deal. Now, would that enable the UK to trade frictionlessly?
The Chequers deal is off the table, because what Theresa...
Well, not according to Theresa May, it isn't. It's that or no deal.
The only people talking about Chequers are in Westminster. In Brussels and every other country in the world, they're looking at this going, what are they playing at? The withdrawal agreement, this negotiation, the deal that everybody in the world is expecting to happen, and the one that we said we would do, consists of securing the rights of citizens in the EU and in the UK. Second point was the financial settlement. And the third point was the border on the island of Ireland, getting a permanent solution to those three things. That's all that's involved within the Article 50 discussions. There's a couple of smaller things like geographic indicators for food. Can a Cornish pasty be called a Cornish pasty if it's made in France? And can champagne be called? But that'll be the easy piece waved through. We have to get those 3 points agreed by next month. We're talking 4 weeks away. October the 18th is the deadline to have those 3 points done. And then we leave on the 29th of March next year once that's ratified. It's extremely unlikely that Theresa May is going to ask the EU to break up their 4 basic founding principles of the single market and say, we just want access to the single market for goods, but not services and not free movement of people. If you look at the size of the populations, this would be like Kazakhstan coming to the United Kingdom and saying, we demand you give us a free trade deal, United Kingdom, but we only want to work with England and Scotland. We don't want to work with Wales and Northern Ireland, and you've got to split it all up and do that. That's what Theresa May is asking the European Union to do, to break up the fundamental principles of this trading bloc. And they're our nearest neighbours.
6 months to go. Jason Hunter, we've got to leave it there. Good to talk to you. I'm really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Let's go back to our main story now, and with 6 months to go until Brexit, the Prime Minister insists that the only alternative to her plan is to leave the EU with no deal. And that comes on the day the International Monetary Fund has warned that a no-deal Brexit would entail substantial costs for the UK economy. Well, we're joined now by David Patton, who is Professor of Industrial Economics at Nottingham University and member of Economists for Free Trade. I know we were trying to talk to you earlier, David, and had a few problems, so thanks for your patience. I just want to explore this idea of a no-deal Brexit, and if then the UK was trading under World Trade Organisation terms, do you accept that that would incur substantial costs?
Not relative to the situation we're in at the moment. Let's remember that trade is not free with the European Union at the moment. We pay a fee of £14 billion gross, £9 billion net for the right to trade freely with the European Union. That's a huge amount of money. Now, actually, there's no need for us to be paying money for a mutually beneficial deal. And Canada trade freely with the European Union without paying that fee. So leaving the European Union gives us the option of exploring free trade with the EU and other countries without paying that money. Now, of course, if we leave without a formal trade deal, that doesn't mean we won't strike one in the future, and the idea that it will take 2 years or more to strike one with the EU is, I'm afraid, nonsense. We start from a position where our standards are exactly the same, and what we should be looking for now is a deal similar to that with Canada, where we trade without tariffs. It's what the EU have indicated they would like, and it's clearly in our interest too. But of course, leaving without a deal has other advantages. We save the money on the divorce bill, which we wouldn't have to pay. We would get the benefits of Brexit much earlier without the transition deal. And that's what I think what doesn't get talked about enough. There are significant benefits from us leaving the European Union in that we will be out of this tariff wall, this protectionist wall, which the EU sets to countries outside the EU and which forces prices up to UK consumers.
But our economy, or do you accept that our economy has been constructed over decades because we are part of the single market, and that any change to that is surely going to have a knock-on effect on businesses and the wider economy? Surely.
Well, of course there'll be effects, but those effects may be good and bad. So the problem with the single market is it affects not just those minority of firms who export to the European Union, but every firm producing in the United Kingdom. Now, some of those rules are good and we want to carry on with them. Some of them are designed really for European Union producers, not for us. For example, the ports directive they want to bring in will be very damaging for our ports. Once we leave the European Union and the single market, we will be able to decide, well, which rules work for our businesses and which don't. And that could give us a significant boost to our economy.
What about if Theresa May gets her way and achieves this Chequers deal? Would that be the answer and help UK business and the economy?
Well, the Chequers deal is really fundamentally flawed. It's proposing to keep us within the single market for good. So we don't get those advantages of leaving the European Union. It goes directly against what Theresa May promised she would do over the past few years, and well, who knows whether it will come in place, but everyone on every side seems to not like the Chequers deal. There would still be some advantages in that we would be leaving the European Union. We would be outside the customs union, so we wouldn't have to charge those high tariffs on our imported goods for food and clothing, which put up prices for UK consumers. But it's really not what we should be aiming for. We should be looking for a good free trade deal with the European Union, but outside the single market and the customs union.
Professor David Patton from Nottingham University and member of Economists for Free Trade. Thanks so much for your time and your patience. Good to talk to you.
It's Patton, not Patton, by the way.
I'll know for next time. Apologies.
Okay.
Thanks. After all that, thanks. Now, a Silicon Valley-based robotics company has made its debut at London Fashion Week, placing robots on the runway.